Hola, ¿cómo estás? It's Chase Holden, aka Garage Guy Chase, and today we are going to be talking about NASCAR's largest Cup Series wreck in history down there at Talladega, my home track. We're talking all about the 28 car pileup, how it fits in comparison to some other wrecks that have happened down at Talladega. We're also going to talk about the DVP and why it sucks ass, as well as read some quotes and hear what drivers have been saying since Ricky Stenhouse Jr. burned it down at America's racetrack. So to kick off this video, I have to just come out and say I am so pleased at the four-wide racing that we saw at Talladega. I mean, just look at it. A masterpiece of racing right there. That is a master class of drafting at its finest. You know, a lot of people talk about how NASCAR is gimmicky and phony. You know what? Maybe they don't get everything right, but they get some things right. Mainly the drivers and the teams with the cars on the track. And it put on one glorious display of just pure American badassery. I don't know how else to explain it. I've been going to Talladega since I was 5 years old. I've seen it all. I've watched Dale Sr. race at Talladega along with Jeff Gordon, Bobby Labonte, Terry Labonte, all the 90s boys, Mark Martin. You name it, I've seen it. Tony Stewart, I can't leave him out too. Shout out to Tony No Hands. That's Tony No Hands. But when we look at what did happen at Talladega, we always know the potential of a crash. And a crash did happen. Just a few laps left to go. Austin Cindric's leading when he pulled too far ahead in the draft. Brad Keselowski tried to close the gap with some help from Joey Logano, but things got a little messy. We all saw that. Keselowski ended up sending Cindric spinning through the field, and that's when the mayhem really began. When the smoke cleared, 28 cars were damaged, with playoff contenders like Chase Elliott and Chase Briscoe caught up in the chaos. Even with all the damage, NASCAR didn't throw the red flag until there were 3 laps to go. They eventually restarted the race with a 2-lap overtime shootout where Ricky Stenhouse Jr. edged out Keselowski by just .006 seconds for the win. And one hell of a finish for Ricky. I wish Madison and his son Stetson, newborn son Stetson, could have been there to celebrate that with him. He did get a little bit emotional in post-race after he was celebrating. But he did what Ricky Stenhouse Jr. does best. He decided to do a little parkour. He slid down a ladder, climbed a fence, multiple ways, I believe. The commentators didn't know what to say. I mean, this guy does P90X at his house at 5 a.m. every morning. P90X times 2. Like P180X is essentially what Ricky Stenhouse does in his spare time. I don't know what else to call him. The dude likes to work out. We'll put it that way. But shout out to my man, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. They are also doing one fantastic fundraising event right now at Slide Job Ranch. If you head over to the Slide Job Ranch shop, you can check out the NC Strong t-shirts. No, I have not been sponsored or paid to say this. I'm doing this out of the goodness of my heart. If you want to find a way to give money to all of the victims of the hurricane, go and buy one of the NC Strong tees from Slide Job Ranch today. Great way to support, great way to donate. Just wanted to throw that out there. So when we're talking about Talladega and we're talking about wrecks, they just go hand in hand. It's been that way forever. Like I said in the beginning of this video, I've been going to Talladega since I was 5 years old. I haven't went year after year after year, but you know, we'd go a couple years here, a couple years there. We would camp at the race over the weekend. That's where I grew up. My camping experience is mostly dedicated to the racing scene. But the one thing I can always say about Talladega, and I'll just be dead honest about it, I have no shame in this at this point in my 32 years of life. You know, when I was a young child, I was basically coached by the adults around me that went to these races and was told to get excited about the fact that we're going to watch these cars go over 200 miles an hour and wait and see who's going to wreck. Also, the adults would get belligerent drunk. My dad may or may not have been one of the people that threw a beer can at Jeff Gordon in the infamous race in the early 2000s. I'm just going to be – my dad threw a beer can at Jeff Gordon's car. He did. His friends did as well, so they can all go down with him if, for some reason people are still looking for those people. And now if you're one of those people that cling to that's how I was raised, you're a liar, because I was raised that way, and I don't want to watch wrecks happen 24/7. When I go to Talladega nowadays, I'm looking to see that 4-wide, 3-wide racing, drivers being able to show their skill, hold that line, and actually provide a passing style of race. That's what we want to see. That's what I want to see, and no judgment to anybody that still feels that way. But whenever you spend so many years growing up as a child, hanging out with a bunch of dudes and chicks, belligerent drunk, just hollering at the top of their lungs when cars pile up and wreck, it can kind of get old a little bit. However, we always had fun. Chase, why do you like to gamble on NASCAR? Well, I grew up entering pools every Talladega. I'll never forget winning at the truck race when I was a young boy. I didn't know what to do with the $500 that I had just won. My dad did try to steal it from me to buy beer for Sunday, but we'll let that slide. I want to talk about the history of wrecks at Talladega and why this track really, in my opinion, is the one track where the wrecking and the racing kind of go hand in hand. Let's turn our attention to the 2003 Aaron's 499. We saw 27 cars taken out in one of the most famous big ones at Talladega. That race started off with chaos early when Elliott Sadler lost control and collected over half the field just 4 laps in. Another memorable one was in 2012 at the Good Sam Roadside Assistance 500. Tony Stewart and Michael Waltrip caused a 25-car wreck on the final lap. This crash also had major playoff implications and took out several contenders. Just as an honorable mention, I wanted to note the 2002 Aaron's 312. It's an Xfinity Series race or a Busch Series race if you are as old as I am. We are talking about NASCAR Cup Series history here, but I did see a lot of people on X talking about the Aaron's 312. It was a 30-car pileup. The Xfinity race is what we would call it today. And I just think it is correct to say that while that is the largest wreck, not the Cup Series, but we'll give it an honorable mention on this video just because. So there's no telling if we're going to see a larger wreck in the NASCAR Cup Series moving forward. Maybe we will, maybe we won't. I'm more of a fan of wanting to see more 4-wide racing at superspeedways where the drivers actually drive the cars and not wreck them. But while the wreck itself was huge, what's got people really talking right now is how NASCAR's damaged vehicle policy, or the DVP, played a role in what happened after the crash. Drivers like Chase Elliott and Chase Briscoe were involved in the wreck and ended up stuck in a bit of a mess. Now, for those who don't know, the DVP says that if you can't drive your car back to pit road after a wreck, you're done for the day. And this rule's been in place since 2017. But with incidents like this one, and especially starting with Josh Berry's crash at Kansas a few weeks ago, the drivers and the teams are questioning how fair this policy really is. Elliott in particular voices frustration, saying that his team did everything right. They got the car back on track and met minimum speed. But because of the green-white checkered finish, 2 other cars that didn't meet the speed requirement were still able to finish ahead of him. Looking back to Josh Berry's accident in Kansas, he was ruled out after a crash on lap 1. And he was ready to have his car towed back to pit road, but NASCAR made the call to park him. His crew chief, Rodney Childers, was furious, saying all Berry needed was new tires. NASCAR has said they're going to review the rule this offseason, but for now, it's going to just keep leaving teams frustrated. And not only teams, but fans too. Let's talk about it. This is a Gen 7 problem. This is the car problem, and that's what you can listen to every NASCAR media publication that's not NASCAR owned this week probably, and they're all going to say the same thing, because if you did say that working for NASCAR, you'd most likely be fired by now. But let's just be honest here. Everything that these drivers have been saying about this car and this rule are correct. That's why you saw Chase Briscoe fighting to keep his window net up on Sunday at Talladega. This is a guy, he's the last SHR driver to possibly, maybe, by the skin of his teeth, get to the Final Four. It's kind of a long shot, but you know what? He's going to do everything he can to make sure that he gets as far as possible without having to make too much of a fuss with the rules, I guess, because it's Stewart-Haas Racing's last year and it's Chase Briscoe's chance to get a NASCAR championship. Why wouldn't you, right? Why wouldn't you leave that window net up if all that's wrong with your car is it needs a tire change? So you've got these safety trucks, you've got these safety workers. Now they're in this conflicted area. I had somebody on X post, they were like, imagine trying to go help a driver and you get pepper sprayed. And it's legit because it's like, I would be in the same situation. Like, was Chase Elliott's car blown to shit? Absolutely. Was Chase Briscoe's car blown to shit? Not really. But let's be honest, okay? A lot of the people that were bitching about Chase Elliott were probably bitching just because they don't like Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott, if he felt that all the car needed was tires and everything else was good and assess that, he should have the right to get back down there. And if they can't figure it out on pit road, then take that shit to the garage and go home. It's that simple. Briscoe's car didn't look that rough. Some of these guys did get back out on the track, but the real problem here is now they've made the change, right? So we saw at Kansas, Josh Berry was out. Nothing you can do about it. Now the drivers are doing something about it, and NASCAR let it roll. Denny Hamlin said on Actions Detrimental that it's just not going to fly. We're making rules on the go, and there's no better way to get a fan base, teams, and drivers to disrespect you than to clearly break rules that are lined out and that are set for a season, especially when you have drivers fighting for a championship right now that have already been affected by this rule previously. So, kind of a double standard going on right now, but I really think what it comes down to is that NASCAR's just really nervous right now. They're really scared. They got a lawsuit coming up. You got drivers getting pissed off. Everyone's kind of angry. It's kind of like a NASCAR civil war, drivers against corporate. I mean, teams, drivers versus corporate sounds cool. Probably be a lot better than a Marvel Civil War movie. I would watch the NASCAR Civil War movie between drivers and teams and the suits. So my final thoughts here is, while I get that NASCAR wants to keep things safe and keep the race moving, the DVP needs to be looked at closely. When you've got guys like Chase Elliott, Josh Berry, and others who could potentially get back in the race, I think NASCAR owes it to the teams to at least give them a shot at repairs. But it's clear the policy isn't going anywhere right now. So I'm hoping they make some tweaks during the offseason. Let me know what you guys think. Should NASCAR change the DVP? Should drivers like Elliott, Berry, Briscoe have been allowed to keep racing? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll be back with more NASCAR and IndyCar content. As always, I'm Chase Holden. So long. Farewell. Goodbye.